So I'm basically showing you guys an outline of the actual course content, what your player will be going through with us in each of the 12 weeks. Then I've got a few extra things to kind of just preview how we're thinking about this program and kind of what's involved. Some of you guys have already been through the discovery process and some of the first steps, but kind of outlining this for everybody across the spectrum, whether you've already signed up or you're thinking about signing up, or you may have just met us and we haven't even done an eval yet with your player, but they're in 7th to 9th grade and they're looking toward playing high school basketball. That's really what this program is about. So first step is to show you kind of the big map overview. This is my brainchild of 3 years now, and this is version 2.0. So we're just releasing in March will be the first cabal of players that are going through the revised version 2.0. So we've got it broken down into 3 phases of 4 weeks or 4 modules. We're going to talk about the focus funnel, which is a lot to do with just how we give instructions and also thinking about player priorities in a funnel model. So we might have 12 things that are on their mind. We're trying to filter down to what are the top 3, how are we going to measure them, and what's the baseline in week 1 so that 12 weeks from now we know if we made an impact, if we actually improve something. The second week is from the sneakers up, so all about footwork, where we spend a lot of our time, where I spend a lot of my brain time, is how to get players better from the sneakers up. Then we go to the 3 pillars of defense. We go through ball handling with the unguardable ankle breaker. It's the most dramatic way I found to say that. The finisher is all about finishing around the room. So we don't just call it layups, which people think about as one thing. We call it finishings, where there's 32 different finishes that we like to get your player good at. And then deep range assassin, we're working really on shooting and how to get more power and range. Situational skills is kind of our first foray into the realm of decision making, which is the second area where I spend the most of my brain time. We get their feet operating and we get their brain operating, then everything else kind of starts to take care of itself. The inside job is all about playing out of the post, how to use the post if you're a guard, how to be in the post and operate as a big man or a big woman if you're inside a lot and probably not touching the ball right now, where most players tend to be. And then we get into creating shots, both off the move, without the ball in your hands, after you catch it, and off the dribble. Scores formula, we get into really measuring efficiency, getting your player thinking about shot selection. So they're not just happy taking whatever shot arrived in their hands and happened to go in the basket, that they're intentionally choosing to take better quality shots with more open space and a higher probability of scoring, and therefore their efficiency goes up. And hopefully, if their coach is paying attention, their value to their team goes up with that. And then we started talking about the advantage multiplier. Actually, had a great session tonight with one of the aspects of this tonight, what we call a hockey assist, driving and passing. So moving the defense in, spreading them out, moving them sideways, trying to multiply advantages as a team so that we don't have the ball stop and the defense gets reset and ready to guard us all the time. And then the last week is the decision maker, which developed kind of a nuanced specialty with this age group of just giving them a framework for decision making so that they can make fast decisions and make them accurate and make them good quality decisions and just give them a way to think about how they make decisions intentionally so that they can have a better sense of control, which a lot of what we're going to do in this program is not directly related to confidence. It's several layers deeper, right? It's several layers underneath confidence, and confidence is just like the end result that people notice. And like we called it that because enough players went through it and enough parents said, their confidence changed, that we decided to call it the confidence formula. Like this is actually a recipe that keeps giving us the same feedback. So the first part that I like to talk about is what is concrete confidence, contrasted with what I call fluffy confidence. So there's a lot of programs out there, mostly online, dealing with mental training and kind of what I think of as the realm of self-esteem. And I call it fluffy confidence, where they're trying to use affirmations and words to change the player's mind, but there's not necessarily any action connected to it. And so what I mean by concrete confidence is really built on certainty. So I actually have a pyramid model I'll show you. The other stuff I can touch on later. We'll get into with the player, but this is something I've thought about a lot and kind of evolved over time. I had 7 different layers. I decided to simplify it down to 3 because I tend to make things too complicated. But really modeled after Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Anybody familiar with that? Like your hierarchy of needs of survival? Yeah, it's kind of fairly common framework that's out there in the world. And so basically what I have discovered by talking to a lot of parents is that everybody wants aggressiveness, right? They want their player to attack the basket more and go after the ball more and do all the things that would go in that bucket of aggressiveness. And they kind of know that confidence is necessary. Like the lack of confidence is pretty noticeable. Your player looks like they are not sure what to do or if they should do it. But what hardly anybody thinks about or spends time on is just certainty. So the pyramid that stacks up to give you concrete confidence and eventually aggressiveness is just plain certainty. If we can get really certain about what our feet are doing on the footwork side, and we get really certain about how to make decisions and to make them well and to make them fast, then confidence just kind of happens naturally. Like, it just shows up. Like, I know what my feet are doing and I know what decisions to make. Like, I look pretty confident. And then I think it's just time and compound interest of playing and experience that eventually moves that into the aggressiveness factor. And so, I like to say there's no shortcuts for this. Like, we'd all like to just hand our player aggressiveness, but they actually need all 3 of these levels in order to get there. And what my goal has become, my mission I've set for myself, is to help players get there before high school. So I think of the high school freshman tryout as like the ultimate stressful situation that players go into. Like they're arriving with like 50-50 chance if I'm going to even make the team. I've never met any of these other players that are pulled from 4 other middle schools that are all now trying out and competing. It might be 40 to 60 kids if you're in a big city that are trying for these 12 spots or 15 spots on a freshman roster. So my whole goal with this program is to set your player off on a trajectory that they are not only certain and confident, but they are actually showing aggressiveness by the time they reach their freshman tryout, and they're a head and shoulders above all their peers, and therefore making the team as a given. And they might even play as a starter on the team or play up to the JV team, opening more opportunities for them by having this done in advance. So the next piece we're going to talk about is discovery. And again, a lot of you guys have already been through this. The confidence index is kind of our start point for everybody. You fill out the scorecard and kind of rate your player, or your player does it themselves, and asks you how certain are you in your footwork and your ball handling and your shooting ability and so forth. And then the evaluation is what we do on the court to just kind of certify, often it doesn't match. Like if the player does it, they may rate themselves really high, but their skill level is actually low, or vice versa. They might think they're a terrible player and we actually raise them up a little bit. Like, actually, you're here. And the SOX grading system is what I developed as kind of a model after the martial arts karate black belt system. We are actually printing a chart for this to be in the gyms because this is a very common question. Like, what does X sock color mean? And so this is kind of our approximate, what we expect skill level to be based on each of the sock colors. So white sock is K through 2nd, yellow sock is 3rd through 5th. Green sock is where we find most 6th, 7th graders are kind of naturally if they haven't worked with us before. They're probably playing on their middle school JV team, maybe B team at the school, or B team if they're into AAU. Blue sock is like middle school varsity, like probably made the A team, and they're in probably 7th or 8th grade. Purple sock is where we think like you're freshman basketball ready, like your skill level, your thinking. So the SOX acronym actually has a meaning to it. In addition to using physical SOX, it is the System for Objective Classification of Knowledge and Skill. That is the SOCKS. And so we're trying to measure, how knowledgeable are you about basketball as well as your skill level. And so if you can reach a purple sock, like through some of the basics that we have in our eval, it pretty much shows us like, yeah, you play a lot of basketball, you know what you're doing, your knowledge and your skill are there. You're freshman ready. Red is JV, black is varsity. We've never had anybody actually do the eval and land in a red or a black yet. Like if they're coming to us, they need help and they're down here, maybe they're eighth grade and they're a yellow sock, they need some work to move up the ladder. And we're trying to give them specific criteria. One thing I hate is the kind of grouping players in a bucket based on their age, which is a terrible indicator of skill, right? You're sixth grade, so you should only play with sixth graders. Doesn't make any sense. If the sixth grader that played 5 years of basketball so far is also with the sixth grader that is their first day playing basketball. So we're trying to separate grade level from skill level by having our own grading system. So maybe the first time you guys have seen that explained all the way through. So we're getting better at that part. So getting into week 1. So this is the start of the actual content, what your player would see from us going through the course and on the court. So the first thing we like to talk about is our methodology for teaching. So there's actually an organization called Tag Teach International that has developed a methodology for giving really good instructions and really precise feedback. And so all of our coaches are trained in this. And if you listen closely, you'll notice we say our instructions in 5 words or less, and we say yes when they do it correctly. And that's the ultimate shortcut hack, whatever you want to call it, that I found to really improve our coaching qualities, that we're not spending any time on what not to do. And we're also not saying, no, you did it wrong, and no, don't do it that way. It's just like, do it this way, yes, or try again. And then we put the onus on us. If they're not getting it, they are doing it wrong, then we'll change, modify, adapt our instruction to give them a smaller piece or say it in a different way until they understand and can do it correctly. And this works fabulous, no matter what age group we're working with, from kindergarten all the way up through college players. When we give them one piece and we say it in 5 words or less, they get it. And we stack small pieces way faster than if we tried to give them a big chunk of ambiguous, vague coaching that is more common out there in the world. The second part of this week is giving them or identifying with them. We kind of collaborate with them. We'll build like our list based on what we've seen. Here's our 3 priorities of what we see, and ask them to like give us their own. So like, hey, what do you think is the biggest thing that we need to change for you in 12 weeks? What is number 2? What is number 3? And then we go after, all right, how are we going to measure this? Like, is it decision speed? Is a very common one for me. Is it, 3-point shooting percentage? Like maybe we don't even try threes right now. Like our percentage is so bad, we wouldn't even attempt one in the game. Can we go after that and make it something decent, like 30%, so that they're comfortable shooting in games? And all this kind of stacks up under the category of control, which, I have a lot to say about. I won't get into too much tonight, but I think players are suffering from a lack of sense of control. Like a lot of frustration in games when they're, complaining about the referees is like they feel like they don't control anything. Coach is controlling playing time, coach is scripting our offense and our defense, referees are making the calls, and I'm left just having to take it. And so what we like to work on is putting things in the bubble of control and identifying those clearly. Like your decisions are under your control, your attack speed and your ball handling moves, your decisions at the rim, like all the pieces that you can control, so that it gives them a sense of, I guess, contributing to confidence, but they have a sense of control. They know what is in their realm, so they can let go of like, all right, the referee's got his bubble of control. Like I can't touch that, but I know what is in my bubble and what I can have an impact on. Week 2 is from the sneakers up. So, I always ask players, question I used to ask when we had a Zoom call portion of this program in my early days, which we really discovered 13-year-olds don't like to be on Zoom, and asked a lot of questions. So we've gone away from that to have pre-recorded content that they can watch on their phone and, scrub forward and backward as they need to. But I used to ask them, how do you build a pyramid? And, the answer I would eventually pull out of them was A, from the ground up, and B, 1 brick at a time. Like I saw an episode of the Ancient Aliens show one time on late night TV. They were talking about this crazy theory that, UFOs suspended a big block from their spaceship and they built the pyramid from the top down. And I thought that was the craziest thing I'd ever heard. So I use that as a contrast. But we're trying to work on building our footwork because our feet are what contact the floor. Like whatever we could do with our shooting skills and our mental skills and our decision making, like all that would have no impact if our footwork was out of control. Like if we didn't know how to use our feet effectively, then really nothing else matters. So we kind of have to start there. And so our approach is like work on the simplest thing is how to stop and how to go and to do that without traveling, because that's where a very common fail point is for players. And this kind of touches on overall philosophy that I like to take is the really the 80-20 rule. Like what is the 20% of what we're doing that has 80% of the impact? And to me, footwork is like top of the list in that realm, because if we get really good at the footwork that happens most frequently in a game, then we're going to have a really good time playing basketball, regardless of whatever skills we build, on top of that from there. So how to stop, how to go, how to do that without traveling. And really we pride ourselves on eliminating traveling so that players are not just traveling less, but this whole season they never got called for travel, at least without being bumped into by a player. Something else caused them to be off balance. But priding ourselves on footwork has really taken us a long way with having consistent success. Week 3 is the 3 pillars of defense. So this is something I borrowed from a longtime mentor of mine, very elderly man now named Ron Ecker, was a NBA assistant coach for a long time college coach, but really gave me the simplified framework I needed to teach defense better, especially in a small group setting. So 3 pillars: contain the drive, contest the shot, and rebound the miss. And they kind of stack up to each other. If you do a good job one-on-one, not letting your player get past you and shoot close to the basket, they're going to miss more shots. If you then also put your hand in their eyes and contest their vision when they're shooting, they're going to miss more shots. And then all you have to do is clean up the mess, rebound when they do miss, and we're going to stop most of the attacks that happen. So this is my whole approach with a team, with a one-on-one player, is like just get good at these 3 things and do them a lot all the time. And suddenly we're pretty successful again at the 80-20 amount of defense. Week 4 is the ankle breaker. So this is actually the new part. The version 2.0 revision is now including more ball handling, because we did not have this module in version 1, and that was kind of a weakness we identified over time. Like, well, yeah, we finished the 12 weeks, but there was not much ball handling time spent. So like talking about how to become unguardable. And again, footwork is involved, how to use footwork to make your ball handling more effective. What I see a lot with even very advanced players and athletes is they're really fast and they're really good at changing direction with the ball, but their footwork is such that they can't actually do much with it. So the ball's flying around, but their feet are way behind and they're not able to use it to effectively get past their defender. So unlike most programs with ball handling, we're not going to make them stand and stare at a wall and pound the ball until there's no air left in it. We're going to show them a situation and use ball handling as a solution to a problem. So what I call applied ball handling, simple as it sounds, but here's a problem, here's the ball, here's a live defender. Go try to solve that problem and get better at handling in a real situation so that when you get to a game, it translates. And that's what we're after on just about all these skills, is direct translation to competition. We don't care if you can dribble really well with nobody in front of you. We want to be able to use it to get scoring. The finisher is all about finishing around the basket. So I mentioned most people have like A and B, right hand and left hand layup, and not much else. If they're stuck, they're just going to go harder and like lean into more defense and, hope they get called for a foul. Again, kind of feeling out of control that I think I got fouled. The referee didn't call a foul. That was my only option. So I don't know what else to do. We're working on, here's A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Whatever your defender does, here's another option, counter move, so that you've always got a way to score. And if they foul you, that's just icing on the cake. We're just scoring all the time. Defense is SOL and trying to stop us the best they can, but we're going to figure out ways to score. So this is built into kind of our decision-making framework of having moves and then counter moves, and just working on the decision between two options. So we're going to layup or we're changing direction. Defense is there, we change direction. No defense there, we already scored a layup, and just getting repetitions with that. And then another revision addition this time with the 2.0 course is finishing through contact. So what I just described has always been my approach, like avoiding contact, finesse finishes, scoring no matter what the defense does. And so now I've kind of come back to, all right, now when the defense is really trying to stop you and there is contact, like we want to be able to make that default layup first, so that they have to try really hard to stop our default because we're capable of finishing through contact. And then when they try too hard, then we change direction, and our other finishes are that much more open. So my favorite recipe, what we're trying to work to as the ideal objective, is any hand, any foot, any time. So we're not just right hand layup off a left foot. It's right hand off a right foot, left hand off a left foot, right off a left, and left off the right, inside and outside. And so we just open up their universe of possibilities until there's really no way to stop them completely from scoring around the basket. They've got options up the wazoo, and they've got control of how they finish when they get to the basket. As you can probably tell, one of my favorite things. The deep range assassin. So this has probably been my favorite week overall, the course. We actually have a standalone course that's 4 weeks long called the Sniper, that's also built on this framework. But most coaches, when they see a player with poor shooting performance, or even just technique that looks different than what they're used to, they go for what I call demolition. They're like, you're doing it wrong. You need to pull your elbow in, and you change your hand placement. You do all these things. And the player is just completely resistant to that, right? Maybe if they're third, fourth, fifth grade, they would adopt what their coach is telling them and do it. But by the time they get to seventh, eighth, ninth grade, they're like, I had my shot. I've played 8 years of basketball. I know how to make shots with what I have right now. Like, my shot is my baby, and I don't want to change it. It's got to be a really high incentive. And so what I've arrived at is what I call remodeling. Instead of you're doing it wrong, we're going to trash your shot and start over. It's like, you're doing this well, you're doing that well. Let's tweak this and maybe change that and focus on this part of it. And, suddenly they're getting more success from each of those small pieces that we're applying for them. And, then they start to trust us, and we can do more over time. But we're taking kind of the long game approach of small pieces stacked up over time, without ever telling them, what you're doing is wrong and your shot's terrible. We're just taking what's working and slowly modifying and improving it. So they might, like, you as a parent might not recognize their shot a year later, but to them it never changed. Like, it's been their shot all the time. We just moved it very small and gradual pieces. And then the other part that we like to work on is power before precision. So kind of, excuse me, going along that same road, instead of trying to get them perfectly looking good mechanically 2 feet from the basket, but then having no power when they back up. And so all that finesse, precision goes away. We try to work on power first. Like, we need to generate power out to as deep range as we can. And then over time, we start to develop more precision, so that they're capable of reaching the basket first, and they're capable of having the same shot at all ranges, so that it's not a really nice technical shot close to the basket and then it's a two-hand whatever huck up when they get out to 3-point line. We want to have the same shot, so we have consistency, and then we really get into just compound interest. It's the same shot every time we shoot, all the time, every time, all the rest of our life. Then we get really good at shooting. What players struggle with, in my perspective, is they have different shots at different spots, and so they're practicing different shots all the time, and they rarely get into a really consistent, repeatable action that makes them better, just by doing more repetitions. All right, situational skill system. We get into first layer decision making. So talking about how to approach a situation. So we'll go through fast breaks, like if you're ahead of the ball, where do you run? If you have the ball in your hands, where do you attack? If you're behind the ball as a trailer, where do you run to? How do you read off the ball? Like, how do you get out of the way and make yourself useful, whether you have the ball or not? Then we go through half court situations and what I call the order of operation. Attack, drive to the basket if you can, pass if you can't drive, dribble handoff if you can't drive or pass, and trying to again put the control in the player hands that has the ball. So rather than waiting for a ball screen, which would be another option, but is slow and relies on somebody else coming to save me by screening for me, I'm able to initiate all these actions myself and get us into a really fast pace of play. Then the inside man, we have a segment we call Rodman rebounding, like really building toward the aggressiveness factor is what we talked about in the pyramid, but trying to get them really good at prediction. You know, there's a lot of cliches, a lot of time spent on boxing out, which is, in my mind, kind of a holdover from a bigger player, slower game near the basket where you're like trying to hold the other guy back. My whole approach is to do what I call bump and chase, which is just a sped up version, kind of more geared toward the guard style game of go hit the opponent and go get the ball first. So I'm not holding the other guy back, like playing not to lose. I am going aggressively hit the guy and go chase the ball down as much as possible. And then the playmaker and the dunker are two things for the inside post player kind of role and how to move with and without the ball. So the playmaker is really traditional post play, but taking more of the Nikola Jokic approach as a passer first. We're catching it, using the angle behind the defense to find cutters and kick out passes. And then if we have the defense spread out, then maybe going one-on-one scoring in the post. So we'll work on both passing and moving off the ball and scoring, one-on-one with our back to the basket. So we get comfortable. Even as a guard, you'll eventually find a matchup where you've got a weaker player on you and you can actually be really purposeful, really dominant in the post. The dunker is slightly different movement, more similar to what we teach on the perimeter of drive and kick, circling the ball, but it's kind of a hide behind the defense and almost behind the backboard position, and then circling when a teammate drives from the perimeter so that you're popping out into kind of the weak side open space, able to catch and score if your defender leaves you to stop the ball. So a lot of hand waving. You guys won't probably gather much out of that, but if you have a big player that plays near the basket, this is like the best thing for them and really fun to get good at. The shot creator, we're going to talk about three categories. Most people think, creating shots, they think of only off the dribble. We're going to spend probably the least amount of our time of the three on that part. We want to work on creating shots before we catch the ball. So how to get open off the ball so that when we catch it, we're already scoring. We create an advantage before we touched it. And then creating shots after we catch it. So footwork again when we catch it. How do we create space? How do we get ourselves open away from a defender to get a shot off? And then with a dribble, live dribble, changing speed, changing direction, kind of our whole theme with ball handling, but how to create shots by having the ball in a live dribble situation. Scorer's formula, we're going to talk about two major aspects. One is scoring efficiency. The other is more just kind of philosophy and mental side of how we think about measuring our progress. This is actually a concept that I borrowed from a business coach named Dan Sullivan. And he actually has an ebook based on this, which I'll actually send to the player to read. If they're into reading, they can kind of glance through it and get some of the gist of it. But the main thing is most players set this big ideal that's unachievable for themselves, and they're measuring themselves against that big gap between there and there. Like maybe it's high school basketball. Like, I want to play high school varsity basketball. I suck. I'm not a high school varsity player yet. I'm not achieving any progress toward that big ideal goal. And the gain is simply turning around and measuring backwards. Like, Tim is on tonight with his son. Kelton's been working with us for about 3 or 4 months now, and his gains have been huge over time. Like if we had him look at last November compared to now, like his progress is incredible, And so trying to just change the player's frame of mind with that is, really important to me because I see a lot of burnout with players is looking at that ideal all the time and putting in a lot of work, some of it misdirected in my opinion, but putting a lot of effort and practice into trying to get better, but always looking at this ideal that's out there in their future that they can't achieve and they don't know how to get closer to it. And then they just quit. Like the cost benefit is like, I'm putting all this effort and cost into it and I'm not seeing any of the benefits. I didn't get any more playing time this season. Like I might as well go do something else with my time. So my whole approach with the gain is to try to get them measuring backwards. So why we set 3 priorities at the start of the program is so that they can look back. Yeah, remember 12 weeks ago, you were here and you only scored 0.2 points per game or points per possession when we were measuring it. And now you're up to, 0.5 or 0.8. Like, we'll get into some basketball math. If your player's into math, they'll love it. If they're not into math, we'll give them basketball math to where they might tolerate it, and give them a way to measure their own efficiency and their own productivity on the court, as well as what I mentioned earlier, shot selections. One of my passions is trying to give them a framework for prioritizing different types of shots. So it's not like all shots are created equal. I chucked it up and it went in, so it's a good shot. It's like, well, I took a good shot even though I missed it, and the value of it is X because I took that shot. Make or miss regardless. So something I'm passionate about, changing players' minds by using math. The week 10 here, actually, this is 11 now. The advantage multiplier. We're talking about how to take a team frame of mind and not just I individually create an advantage, but then I either lost that advantage or when I passed, my teammate killed the advantage by holding the ball too long and the defense, got readjusted and ready to stop us. We want to get in the frame of mind of he creates an advantage. When he gives it to me, I multiply that advantage until we're an unstoppable force. But by the time we choose to take a shot, the defense is so disorganized and out of position that we could really score any way we want to. This is like we choose our favorite shot of the moment when we get to that point. So my favorite teams from this are like, the Spurs from back in the day when they would really move the ball well, or the Golden State Warriors from their 2015 era. Like, they did a fantastic job of this. Like, the ball never stopped moving and the defense never got set, and therefore they could score in a bunch of different ways. And so, kind of building on our order of operations, we work a lot on drive and kick, a lot on pass and cutting, and then a lot on dribble handoffs and some post action, so that they've got multiple ways to keep multiplying those advantages and moving toward principle based offense. So, my antidote to what they'll see from most coaches, which is too scripted of offense, in my opinion. They're running really set patterns that they can memorize, but they're not really learning to play basketball. They're doing pattern memorization. Like, we run this pattern in practice, we run this pattern in games, we know how the pattern works, but it's kind of like guerrilla warfare, in my opinion. The defense, you may have spent 6 months as an offense perfecting this pattern play, but the defense sees it in 30 seconds and they're like, oh, when they go here, he passes there, I can steal that pass, right? They can disrupt that pattern offense very easily. So what we're working toward is group improvisation, like the hive brain approach based on principles, is like, when X teammate does this, I do that. And we're just reacting to each other and to the defense in some ways, so that we're all on the same page. We know where to expect our teammates to be, and we're able to improvise, adapt, and overcome whatever the defense throws at us. Like, we've got moves and counter moves in sync with our teammates, so that the defense has no idea what's coming. And when they stop one of our options, we have an automatic next step that's already prepared in our player's mind, and they're able to advance the speed of play a lot faster and again become unguardable, similar to the individual approach with ball handling. Like, we are changing speed and direction, and as a team, we're changing pace and action in a team offense to where the defense really never catches up. They're on their heels the whole time until we score in whatever way we find best. The last one is the decision maker. So I've actually done presentations and talked to, behavior science and decision making organizations about this whole framework. I'm not the only one that's come up with it. I just came to it from basketball instead of from, laboratory science or like deep research PhDs that are way smarter than me. I just arrived at this over a lot of time of working on decision making. So I call it binary decision making. And a lot of thought into this has really brought me to the conclusion that if we give a player even 3 options, it's going to slow down their decision so much that they won't have an advantage anymore. And so, like, what most coaches and players would say if we asked them how many options they have when they catch a pass, they would say shoot, drive, or pass, right? But even 3 is slowing us down. Like by the time I look around, because I guess I should say passing includes 4 options to pass to. And so by the time I check, am I open to shoot? Should I drive? Is teammate A, B, C, D, E open? If I should have shot or driven, that opportunity is now gone and I will never get it back. Right. So it's too slow to have even 3 options. So binary decision making, the simplest situation that you guys could probably relate to that I like to explain with is shot or drive when they catch a pass. So they're out at the 3-point line, they catch a pass from a teammate. If they can't shoot, then we want them to drive. And it's kind of like an on-off switch. If you're familiar with binary code, the reason I call it that is like binary code is just ones and zeros. And there's always a default and then an alternative. And so we want to have shooting as like our on switch. We're always shooting, shooting, shooting every time we're open. It's automatic. We always looking to shoot, preparing to shoot, thinking we're going to shoot. And then when the defender's hand is up in our face, when we catch a pass, we automatically drive instead. And then the pass option, like the third option that most coaches would give your player, we just save for a second layer decision so that if we drive, now we're going to score. And if another defender stops us, now the pass happens, very easily and obviously. It's not just I finished and I crashed through 2 defenders. It's I'm either going to finish if I'm open or maybe one-on-one with my defender. But if a secondary defender comes, now my pass, becomes an obvious decision, a second layer decision. So what I've come to call a decision tree, like one decision splits the 2 options, that next path splits the 2 more options and so forth. Typically 2 to 3 to maybe 4 decisions are made before, the end of a play, or at least the end of a possession in your player's hand before they give it up to a teammate and are back into a different scenario. And then this brings up kind of an overall theme that I've arrived at. And one reason that we're moving to this group competition model for the formula program, where in the past we've done one night of one-on-one session and one night of competition, is what I call building the skills downstream from decisions. So it's more important to me that the player sees the context. Like we're going to play one-on-one, and when you arrive at this problem, I'm going to show you the skill as a solution to a problem. So that we're building the context of basketball in the whole thing, right? It's not we stared at the wall and dribbled 1,000 times, and now we're ready to maybe try dribbling in a game. We are creating the problem in a game situation that's, real world game situation, something they will see in a game. And then we're showing them a skill. Hey, that problem you just had, here's a solution to that problem. And they already made the decision that brought them to the problem. So the decision is now causing the skill to be built downstream from the decision. So that's what I mean by building skills downstream from decisions. We're trying to get good at the decisions first, because repetition at decision making and getting accurate, precise, and fast at decision making then makes executing the skills really easy. Like if you destroy your defender by making a quick decision and driving, but you can't make a layup, like making a layup is actually pretty easy. Like if you destroy a defender and you're wide open to the layup, like we can get you better at making layups pretty easily. But it's a lot harder to go reverse. Like we could practice layups all day with no decision attached, but then when we go play, like we can't beat our defender by making a decision. We never get the chance to make a layup. So we're kind of reversing order of how most people teach skills. And the group aspect of this is now really conducive to that, because we can throw them right into a game at the start of practice on breakdown night. And I kind of already know what problems they're going to arrive at, but I want them to experience it before I present, here's the skill for tonight. We're going to work on this as a solution to what you just saw. And then 10 minutes later, we're going to play again. And now you have a solution that you can practice in a live situational game. So that brings us to the end. I did not fill out my conclusions yet. I'm still working on what my conclusions will be as we get to the player aspect of this. But I'd love to take questions from you guys. And for a couple of you that have already signed up, or at least made a commitment for the summer session, if you're not fully signed up yet, I'd love to hear from you about what you've seen from us that has kind of caused you to want to sign up, and maybe questions you have specific to now that you're signed up. What's next and what we can look forward to. So, anybody have a question to start out with?
I could start, BJ. I guess I'll answer your first question around why we're doing the 12-week program with Kelton. As you mentioned, he's kind of been with you for a couple months now, 3 or 4 months, and we've seen some progress where he went through a lot of what you were talking about in like microbursts. So being able to practice a skill, realize that it wasn't working, and then have a solution, practice the solution, and then implement it in gameplay. We're starting to see it where he's taking it from the work that he's doing with you and putting it into some games that he's doing outside of your program. So we're seeing some good growth, and I think this 12-week program can really kind of explode that out. My question is, you mentioned kind of the measurement.
Yeah.
Is there going to be any kind of like final evaluation to be able to kind of demonstrate some of that progress to the player so that they can see some actual results of, because I know like they'll feel it. Like
Right.
I know Kelton's already felt some of it, but like, is there anything he'll be able to see intangibly, like say, oh wow, I got a lot better with, I don't know, shooting percentage, or I got a lot better with how many rebounds I can grab, or
Right. Yeah, so there are, I guess, two aspects to that measurement. And yes, we will be doing a final evaluation to kind of reassess. And, we always kind of give them the chance to raise their sock color to the next level. By the time they're done with the 12 weeks, it's usually, one or maybe even two levels that they're jumping up because they've improved in a lot of different areas. But I guess two aspects. The first is like their original eval with us. Like when we first saw them, we probably did at least our 30-minute eval. So we have like metrics from that we have captured. And then part of that, week one with the focus funnel, where we're talking about, how are we gonna identify priorities for them? We try to move toward, okay, let's measure those three things now, and then we're going to capture that and remeasure those same three things 12 weeks from now, so that it's great to have a good sense of confidence, but I'd put that kind of in the fluffy realm again. Like, I really want to prove to you, like, because there's some aspects where you don't know as a player. Like,
agreed.
I don't feel that much different. It's kind of an intangible, but actually you're moving off the ball 3 seconds faster, and like your decision making is 2 seconds faster, and like your scoring efficiency went from 0.5 to 1.25 per shot. And
Right.
there's a lot of
Or
different.
even when, like what you were saying, where what they think is disassociated from what they're actually doing. So
Yes.
like seeing it on paper and with stats is good.
Yeah, and the other aspect of that is the film. So we use the home court app to capture all the workouts, so that they can also see visibly, like, hey, here you are week one, and here you are week 12, and all along the way, like they can be watching their own progress and making that contrast. Good question. Thanks, Tim. Anybody else have a question?
This is Sarah. Sorry, I was driving earlier, so
That's okay. I
uh
figured you were on too early to have made it back home yet.
yeah. And I didn't know I had limited ability because it was in drive mode, but and I was hoping I wasn't off mute. But anyways, Sienna really enjoyed her time tonight. She really liked the group, the whatever it was that she participated in.
Yeah, that was
I
our Ignition League tonight.
Okay, yeah, she really liked the group aspect and the instruction that she got.
Good.
And I think because we're new to this and we were just checking it out for the first time tonight, I am a little confused about like the different options. Like, is this 12-week program a group option? Is it group or is it individual instruction?
So
That was the
we have it as both, but
okay.
The intention is to do the group because we get more competitive application. Like
Yeah.
the part that Sienna enjoyed the most tonight is really what we're doing all the time with that group aspect.
Okay. Because I like the idea of the 12-week program.
Yeah.
I just know, I think after talking to her tonight, she would prefer it to be a group as opposed to individual instruction. But I also kind of liked that she was able to play with other, like do the 3v3 or 5v5 or whatever. So,
Right.
okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's kind of the the evolution in my mind. Like I have done and continue to do a lot of one-on-one training, but I always look at the gap between one on nobody to 5-on-5. It's too big, so we need a group competition aspect to connect the dots in the player's mind. And so this is, kind of the next evolution with the program is doing that more intentionally and doing it in a way with enough lead time that we can really sort and filter players so that they have, the best matchups possible for them. So when they're in that group, it's like the best 6 players to push them, to the edge of challenge where they can really improve.
And I guess my only other question, sorry, is
Yep.
the other thing she really enjoyed was this might not be part of this 12-week formula, but was that workout session like in between?
Yeah.
And is that included at all as part of this or?
Not included, but I'm going to
Okay.
talk about that in a few minutes because that's
Okay.
one of the add-ons that we've developed over time is we call it our injury prevention package, but basically giving them a chance to do at least once a week workout with one of our coaches so they can kind of watch their technique and then have a take-home workout package so they can go home and like do it on their own, 3 to 4 days a week ideally. And we call it injury prevention rather than just strength and conditioning training because we really want the intention to be don't roll your ankles. Like get good at how to move your body and control your body and actually play basketball in a way that you're not tripping and rolling your ankle and being on the sideline for 6 weeks. Because that's really the worst thing that can happen to them from a basketball development standpoint is that they're out and can't walk for 6 weeks and they miss that compound interest, of that bank account development happening all the time. So great question, Sarah, and I will touch on that here in a moment. Any other questions?
I have a question. Right now, what is the group looking like for March? Because we've signed up Leia already, and our other people signed up.
Yeah. So we have 5 so far, and those are split between the high school and the middle school. So what it looks like right now is actually high school girls and middle school boys, and we may have a couple girls that could go either way. So we're really looking at those 2 groups with the high school being 7 to 8 o'clock and the middle school being 6 to 7 o'clock. So I think with the 8 of us that are on tonight, I think there's 3 more that are thinking about it, and then I have several more evaluations that are coming from now through vacation week that are gonna basically fill up both of those groups. And like I said, kind of sort and filter the players to see which of those 2 options would be the best fit. Good question. And then I guess Tim and Patrick here are both signed up for the summer session. So we're also taking deposits for summer session, which will start on June 18th. And it'll be very similar format, Tuesday and Thursday night with a group of 6. And we're sorting right now with more lead time. We get more precise matchups made in which group each player fits into. So I know some of you have some conflicts or other stuff going on in the spring. And so that summer session is the next option. We'll also be doing a fall version when we get to September. So if there are no more questions, I will touch on 3 of the big things that we're offering as kind of an add-on to the program. So one is the upsell to a premium package where you would actually get a one-on-one session every week in addition to the 12-week program. So that's another $1,500. So it'd be $3,000 instead of the $1,500 basic package. Then we have the injury prevention that Sarah just brought up, and that includes once a week with a coach as well as a take-home package, and that is $900 to add on for the 12-week session. And then the last one we have is a video feedback package. And that actually fits in with another kind of long-term option that we've developed just this winter, which we call the confidence warranty. And basically it's more weighted toward off the court support for your player and less obligation for them to get to the court. So, twice a week, as simple as that sounds some ways, like twice a week, if we did that year round, is a lot of obligation for family logistics and everything else to sustain that. So the confidence warranty is designed to text them 3 times a week, send them video from whatever workouts or game film they have going on, and provide once a month workout to kind of troubleshoot, what we've developed as our list to troubleshoot over the course of a month. And so that's $250 a month. And we're selling that as kind of an add-on to the Confidence Formula 12-week program to prepay for a year of that to kind of continue. So the warranty idea is legitimate in that we want to build up their skill set and their knowledge in these 12 weeks. But what we've discovered is if we don't see them again for 9 months, then we're basically starting back over. And so the warranty plan is designed to keep that in continuity. At least once a month, we're going to get them on the court. We're going to do an hour workout with them to really troubleshoot what's going on with them. And meantime, we're going to capture film from their AAU games or their summer league high school games or whatever they got going on and our workouts. And we're going to give them feedback on a weekly basis. Like, hey, here's your game from Friday. You had these 3 plays that I thought were noticeable where you held the ball too long and didn't make a decision, or, you took a shot and got blocked. Here's where you could have done a different finish, kind of simple technical skills, just building on what we have done over the 12 weeks. So we only offer that to players that have graduated the 12-week program because they have that rapport with us and they have that knowledge and skill base that we can really talk about details on film in a way that they can understand. So any questions about any of those? I know I talk kind of fast. We got a lot of information flying around out here. Cool. I'll take silence as a no. When I'm on the court, I often ask, when I ask a question, I want an audible answer because the players will just sit there, kind of like you guys just did. You're on Zoom and you're on mute, so you gotta pass on that. Any other questions as we wrap up?
Well, BJ, I don't have a question, but I do just have a comment. This has really been very informative for me, and I know my son Joey has taken a big kind of leap over the last year, kind of going from a wing player, didn't really have the ball in his hands very often, to a point guard on his rec team, and I feel like this sets him up in a good way for his upcoming 8th grade year. I know he loves the game a lot. He works on it all the time. But I do feel like he could definitely benefit from some great coaching, certainly better coaching than I could provide to him. So I definitely, we're really excited to participate in the summer program. So
awesome.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Patrick. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a fun group already with the guys we got coming in the summer. All right, guys. Thanks for your time. It's great to have you on.
Thanks, PJ.
Thanks, BJ.
Talk to you soon.
Take care.
Bye.